Right folks, so we're out here today with Ben on the banks of the Laurels Lake here at Drennan Lindholme to talk you through a bit of margin fishing. It's something that it can be very easy to get a load of fish in your peg, but catching them's a different game. That's a nice Laurels F1. So what tonight's going to be about, we'll talk you through the rigs, the bait, the feeding, and some of those little tricks to help you control the peg if you're having a few problems. You might be getting a few liners, foul looking odd fish and so on. So hopefully it'll make things a bit easier for you going forward, whether you're fishing matches or just help you get the most out of your pleasure sessions. So one thing that's important with this style of fishing, especially in these areas of your peg, as you can see, there's the odd larger specimen about. So once we've netted this, hopefully, we'll turn around and we'll have a little chat about the rig and the reasons for all the components. Ooh, he's here. Got him. We've snuck him in. Nice mirror. Off you go, mate. So, rigs. Stuck him up and then we can have a little rattle on about that. So this style of fishing, especially later on in the day, you're fishing for carp, bigger fish, those fish that are really going to make a difference when you're in a match to your weight come the end. So for me, if carp are the target, there's no point fishing light, there's no point fishing fine, because one, we need to land them quick because we're going to have quite a short window of catching them, and two, they're big. You know, you're often coming into contact with double figure fish, even bigger now in some of the lakes. So it's important that all this is robust and durable and well up to the task in hand. So elastic here, it's a Drennan orange power pull, it's around a 17-19. I think anything that sort of grade, it's soft on the strike, so you're not going to bump it. You know, you might hook an odd F1, an odd big skimmer, things like that. You're still going to get some elastic out, but you need something with plenty of power in reserve that you're not going to have any problems and be getting towed all around the lake all afternoon. Mainline 020 or 022. Personally I use an 020. I know some lads fish heavier. The reason being, it's nice and durable and strong, and it gives me plenty of scope to fish nice, heavy, robust hook lengths. The beauty of this as well, you know, we're fishing in and amongst platforms, reeds, roots. If it pings off any of that, I'm not just going to get snapped. Float wise, in this depth of water, and it's something that I'll touch on a bit later on when Ben can get the camera in a bit closer. So it's all relevant to the depth of water. This is a 0.4 Drennan margin crystal. And there's a couple of key features on this float that make it perfect for the job. The first being nice 2mm olive bristle. It's buoyant if I want to fish a big bait, you know, double worm, big bunches of maggots, single or double corn, paste if you're into your paste fishing. It's going to support that bait, which is important. And then the next element, nice glass stem. The beauty of glass, one, it's strong, and two, it's heavy, so the float's going to sit really quickly. That's just down to a little bulk of 5 number 8s right next to a hook length knot, and what that's going to do is act as a little anchor point for the rig. So if a big fish comes in, so you've got my rig there, if a 10-pound fish comes into that, it's going to move the full rig round. By having overshot right at the bottom of the rig, it's going to reset my rig quickly, so I'm not going to be getting liners and silly indications and picking up at false bites. And that's down to a 3-inch hook length, again, to be positive. Pin that bait on bottom where I'm not going to suffer as much from liners and foul hookers. So it's a 3-inch hook length with 019 down to a size 12 911X. And the beauty of big hook, one, we're fishing big bait, so it's hidden within the bait, but two, it gives me that security and that potential that I can really put that pressure on them fish if I'm fishing near snags, or it might be I'm running out of time in a match and I need to get in and get that next fish. So that's everything in terms of a rig. We'll run you through bait in a minute and feeding and everything like that, but for now I think I'm going to have another drop. attached to a rather angry carp. Hopefully we've just got this on the GoPro as well, of it being lowered straight in, and to be honest, this one's just pulled the elastic out. Can't believe how confidently they're feeding in the edge, but that change to the bank, you know, just smoothing that bottom just to make sure the depth is in the correct area of the peg has been like flicking a light switch. Again, just take your time, like, see how quickly you can line these up. Nice big Laurels common. Look at him. And it really is just a case of repeating the process until something changes. Either the fish start behaving differently or they stop coming in, and that's where you need to change what you're doing, not just, you know, sporadically do something different. Everything we want to be doing is based around how them fish are behaving in the peg, and if there's one tip I can give you, that is a massive one that will really help you out. If you can make decisions based on what's happening in your peg rather than guesswork, it's really going to help stack them odds in your favour and make catching those margin fish that little bit easier. Like that. So in terms of margin fishing, how do you pick a side? For me, there's a few go-to rules, and this peg almost illustrates it quite nicely. As you can see, we've got an island behind us, so I wouldn't often want to fish in the lee of the island. So in this peg, for instance, I wouldn't want to fish down this right-hand side if possible. However, I would always set it up because there is exceptions to a rule. We can't, you know, stick to a pattern with fishing because we're trying to control nature at the end of the day. However, on this peg, by fishing to my left, I'm fishing more towards the open water where I've got a bigger circumference to draw fish from and hopefully build that peg up stronger. Another little point is, where is the pressure on the lake? So often on matches it might be two together miss one, or you know, this peg to my left here is a bit closer than that to my right, and that things like that will all dictate the way and the direction in which I'm fishing. Always, if you can, create your own bit of space and fish towards the space, giving you more room so those fish will settle and come into your peg a bit better. So I've already started, so I'm not going to put another one of these in, but say you arrive at your peg, or you sat there, you're well into your session and you want to feed your margins, how would you kick it off? There's a few little rules I follow. So for instance, keeping it relevant to Lindholme, let's talk about the different lakes. If we're up on, say, the Bonsai Lake, where there's a big head of new fish, massive volume of fish, you don't want too much bait in your peg, because again, going back to that old story of you're going to create chaos. So often just one or two 250ml pots like that of loose ground bait, just push it in, can be the way to go. Here on Laurels, I'd up that slightly, probably 3 or 4 pots, and just monitor it. See if an odd one starts coming in, then you might have to top up, you know, before you're ready to drop on. But one key is just make little sandcastles out of your mix like that. So the issue with, say, forming a ball of ground bait, that ball's going to roll. The beauty of these sandcastles are, there's a bit of density to help them travel down through the water, but as soon as they come into contact with the bottom, they're going to break up. And if, like today, we're going to be laying on a slope, It means your bait's going to stay in place, and then you can present that big visible hook bait over the top and start putting some fish in your net. So, bait for margin fishing can be a bit of a minefield in honesty, but if you stick to a few rules, it'll help simplify it for you. So, ground bait in the edge has been around for a while now, but you need to stick to a few rules with it regarding the depths that you're going to feed it in. Anything 3 foot plus, I'd just stay away from it. You're just going to create yourself problems. Anything 2.5 foot or less, definitely well worth feeding it in. It's a nice attractor, going to cover the bottom, make a cloud, and the other thing is you can feed a volume of it to get them fishing and grubbing. Once they're there, you can worry about tidying things up so you can catch them. So 2.5 foot or less, ground bait's definitely an option. Another option, because some venues do ban or they limit ground bait, and if that's the case and you're restricted with what you can do in terms of ground bait, micro pellets are brilliant. The way you prepare both of these though is very important. For ground bait, what I'd do, I'd have the 2 components to the bucket. For me, there's only one mix, green swim stim and marine halibut, mix 50-50. And what I try to do is almost over wet the ground bait, not to the point it's ruined, but I want to make a nice heavy dense mix that's going to carry down to the bottom. So again, trying to pin them fish on the bottom. If I've got too dry a mix, it's just simply going to float off. By making sure it's got plenty of water within that mix, it's going to pin everything to the bottom and get them fish in an area where I can catch. Same with micros really. All I do, dry micros straight into a tub, fill the bowl or tub container, same level of water as it is micros, and just leave them, forget about them. They want a minimum of probably 40 minutes to an hour though to take that water on properly. In winter, obviously it takes a bit longer because it's cooler, but this time of year, an hour's plenty of time. So they're my 2 feed baits for probably 2.5 foot or less. In terms of hook baits for if I'm feeding ground bait or micros, for me there's 3 really. Worms, corn, or a big bunch of dead maggots. Stick to them and you'll not go far wrong. Often I'll start on a big bunch of maggots, but if I'm having problems with silverfish or anything like that, corn or double worm can be the way to go. So something I get asked a lot is what do you do on venues that are say quite deep in the edge? It might be 3 to 4 foot, it might be deeper. So for me, it all comes down to what you're fishing for. If say we're on the Willers Lake, like what's behind me, if it's that deep in the edge and you're fishing for F1s, you've always got the option of catching them shallow in the margins. You know, you might be able to loose feed casters, maggots, pellets and catch them in that way. If say you're on a lake such as this, the Laurels or Loco over back there, feeding quantities of hard pellets is the way to go for me. So on the tray here I've got some 6mm and some 8mm hard pellets. Simply either big potting 6mm, or if it's a little bit more difficult, 4mm can be brilliant because you can feed a larger volume of them, and presenting a nice hard 8mm pellet over the top. Again, just that slightly bigger bait to help the fish pick it out. If it's deeper, by feeding in that way, fishing nice heavy baits, particle baits as well, which is important. Fish are going to follow them down to the bottom and pick individual particles up. You're not going to have so many problems with liners and foul hookers in that depth of water if you feed in that way. The other beauty of that is if you are having them issues, you can control your volumes of bait a lot better. You know, I could go in with a big kinder pot, a little kinder pot. If I'm not getting any signs, I can use a big pot, cupping kit. It's just a bit more flexible, and that is something what we're going to touch on next. Pots and volumes of bait, which can drastically change how your day is going in the edge. So, as we've touched on, the amount of bait you feed, you could be feeding the correct bait in the wrong amount and it can completely mess your day up. So a few little rules as to what you can do. For me, to introduce that bait initially, sorry I'm just watching a cart down there, but to introduce that bait initially, that big pot, you know, especially in shallow water, volumes of bait, get those fish in, get them competing and make sure you're building the confidence. And then if I'm waiting a while for bites or I feel the fish are losing confidence, I'd be more than happy to go back in again with that big pot and build it up again. If not, there's 4 different size pots here that I use to control my peg and control what's going on, just to help avoid foul hookers or, as daft as it sounds, too many fish in that peg that can create problems. So the first one is the smallest pot. What that's more for is, say, venues where you're fishing across. It might be more F1 style venues where the fish are already in the peg and I'm just wanting to focus them around my hook bait. I don't want too big a volume of bait because I'm going to just create carnage and you have that washing machine effect where your rig's going all over the place. So if you're finding you're already lowering your rig in and there's fish sat in your peg straight away, always step down the pot size. If you're waiting too long for a bite, likewise go up a pot size. So that'd be the use for the first one. The next one's the medium pot, and for me, if it's slightly deeper, you know, I don't want too big a volume of bait, I don't want to risk foul looking fish, maybe the medium's the way to go. Alternatively, if I'm fishing for carp and I'm finding they're quite happily sat in the peg waiting, or I'm having to, you know, too much going on in terms of liners indications from the bigger two pots, that's where I'd step it down. The large pot is basically what I'd start on. You know, it's a nice volume of bait just to go in and get a bite. We're trying to create that little trap on the bottom, and it's a nice volume of bait until we get into a river and we might start getting some liners and indications. Let the fish tell you. If you're not getting signs, up the pot size. If you're getting too many signs and liners, go down the pot size. So that's a large pot. And the next one in terms of pole mounted pots is just, I think it's called a paste pot, what Guru do, and that is the biggest pole mounted pot I'd use. And the beauty of this one is it's quite a big volume of bait, so if I'm going in catching very well but a big pot's creating chaos but I can't get a sign on the large, that's the way I'd go. Another nice thing with that is, say you're going to venues where it's fishing really well, fish are really confident and coming in, I'm on top of my bait a lot quicker with this pot as opposed to that. And by that I mean, with the potting kit, you have to ship out, pot your bait in, you're coming back, those fish might have already been in on that bait and ate it. By using a big pole mounted pot, I can tip my bait in and drop my rig straight on it and create that perfect trap to catch the fish. So it's just a few things, but definitely having a few different size pots and options in terms of the amount of bait you feed is going to help you put more fish in the net. So following on from that little segment about why I've gone for this mix myself, is why do we use almost pellet based mixes? The reason being is we don't want to attract the wrong sort of fish or create the wrong sort of activity in the peg. If we use a mix that is, say, high in hemp or breadcrumb based, anything more cereal based, more of sort of a traditional mix, so to speak, you're just going to create the wrong sort of activity in the peg. The mix is going to be too active, you know, fizzing, particles lifting up off the bottom. So one, it's going to be too attractive to a smaller fish, which isn't the target in the peg, and two, any of those better fish that do come in, you are just going to have problems with liners and foul hookers. As I say, everything for me about this mix is perfect. It's geared towards pinning those fish down and getting them grubbing on the bottom where I can catch them easily. So one of the main tips I can give you with your margin fishing is, where possible, get as tight to the banking as you can. So basically, the way I try to look at it and the way I try to explain it, that lake is a fish's little world, so it can't get past that bank there. So if I can put my rig flush to the bank, I'm reducing the number of directions that fish can come into my peg and feed from. By doing that, I'm going to minimise liners and therefore foul hook fish, meaning I'm going to get cleaner bites, hook more fish in the mouth and have a more enjoyable, less frustrating day, because we've all had it where we've been pulling his hair out at foul hook fishing the edge. So one thing that Ben's just reminded me about that I didn't touch on is why so often we can be catching really well in the edge but struggling short. For me, a lot of this is down to the makeup of the bottom. Often on that short line you're starting to fish where the silt's collecting the debris, and what it is, it's a much softer bottom. And if any of you have ever fell in or been in a lake, you know this bottom is really soft. It can often be, you know, a foot to 2-3 foot deep in silt. The problem is what happens on that bottom, the fish begin to dig the bottom away. So often you'll catch 3 or 4 fish really nice, then you'll have problems with foul hookers, liners, and often it's just a case of fish digging the bottom away. What you can do in that case, you can just replumb 2 or 3 foot to the left, right, slightly past, and find a bit of the bottom that's not been disturbed. But it is a case of being quite flexible through the day. You might have to move 4, 5, 6 times as that bottom's obviously disturbed and disrupted as those fish come in. In contrast to that, the margin, you are still fishing on the clay or the hard bottom. And what this means is that is fixed. It's never going to move. No matter how many fish come in, that depth isn't going to alter. So it's a lot easier to catch them fish. And also, because of this harder bottom, you can get away with feeding a bigger volume of bait. So if I'm struggling to attract fish, I can feed a lot bigger quantity of bait and almost force a response in my peg. I've not really got that option short because I'm just going to create chaos, foul hookers, line bites, everything that you're almost trying to avoid really. So next time you're out, give a little bit of thought, you know, to the makeup of the bottom. Sometimes just drop your plummet in, see if it sticks. It can really impact what you do put in your net through the day. So, although I'm a massive advocate of green swim stim and marine halibut, Ben's trying to get me to give away a few secrets as to why we opt for this mix. So the key for me is it's got to be heavy, it's got to take a lot of water, and the beauty of this mix is it's so versatile. I can make it over wet and heavy, I can make it nice and fine, and that's why you see so much of what I do is based around this mix. It is the base mix for all my commercial fishing. You know, the key for me is has to be able to take a lot of water and mix heavy. I like a nice dark coloration. I don't want something like bright red, bright yellow, something too vibrant. You know, sometimes I might even say add a bit of black swim stim to this just to take that edge off that colouring, just so it blends in with the bottom. The fish are going to feel safe coming over it, you know, but everyone's got their own favourite mixes. What I would say is stick to what you're confident in, stick to what you know, but make sure it takes plenty of water and it can carry down to the bottom. So, common question is, when do I feed it and when do I drop on it? In terms of feeding, it's always, going back to matches again, probably be 2.5 hours to go, probably looking to drop on it with say that 2 hours or the hour and a half remaining. Depending how well the lake's fishing, often the harder the lake's fishing and the lower the target weight, the later those margins will work. However, it's still always worth targeting, as 2 or 3 fish down there can make all the difference come the end. If it's a pleasure session and you're not so much restricted by time, you know, you're looking for signs, movement in the edge. Let's see, I'm sure Ben will have some shots of some swirls we've got going on there. You will not believe how many fish are coming in. But other things as well, sometimes it might just be a case of the water colouring up slightly. You know, you can see them where the fish are disturbing the bottom and the mud and it's darkening the water in that area. But, and you know, it might be a case of you can see tails waving at you. If you've got the party hats on and those tails are waving, it's well worth a drop. But just be mindful that it isn't going to be one of those lines that you catch on for a full duration of your session, apart from them very rare red letter days. But it is definitely a place to be looking to boost your weight in them later parts of the day, be it your match or your pleasure session, and you just wanting to take a quid off your mate. Just keep an eye out for those telltale signs. So I've finally been allowed to have a drop. So we've been seeing a few tails and things, so I've just started with a single grain of corn on the hook, and because those fish are so happy and confident in the peg, just gone out with the kinder. So all I'm going to do, turn the pot over, touch it on the surface to release the bait. That water will flood the pot and push the bait out. Oh, he's just rinsed me. So we'll just have one little quick drop, because I don't want to feed on top of that bait, but he'd pulled the elastic out him and I was reacting like a dead cat. So you see, the line is straight away. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to give this a quick minute. If I don't get a bite, I'm coming and refeed because it's disturbed my trap. The idea of this is I've just created a little mouse trap every time I drop in. Ooh, liner. So ignore all of that. Anything like that is a liner. all I'm looking for is a nice clean bite that flies under at 100 miles an hour. So you see, all the time these lines are going on, don't touch the rig. The last thing you want to do is foul up one. So now that's stopped, I can pick my float up and reposition it. Ooh, so I've missed that one there. But hopefully what Ben's picked up is that the indication's a lot different, it's a lot cleaner, a lot faster. So because of the amount of signs, I'm going to swap from corn to maggots just to give my hook bait a bit of a longer life. Perfectly position that rig. There you go. And that's the difference when your rig's in the correct position. How much cleaner that indication was. And that rig's what? 3 inches away from where we plumbed up originally, and that's how crucial it is, and something that so many folk overlook. You know, we've gone from liners, missing bites, silly indications, to we've dropped in and within 10 seconds we're playing a nice Laurels carp. It's doing his best to run me under the bank. And I don't know if the camera's still on, but there's a nice ghosty in the edge now. Can't see anything now, the sun's blinding me. There you go. Another nice little tip for you is once you've netted that fish, keep your top kit up in the net. And what that's going to do is keep your rig away from your landing net and minimise any damage to floats, hooks, etc. Just keep that rig in top condition, ready for when you drop back in. So it's still there now, so that's telling me I might be feeding too big a volume of bait. Again, find a nice piece of corn. Sometimes you'll get an odd grain of corn that's really hard. Always swap that, find one that's a bit softer, a bit nicer, and what that's going to do is your hook's going to pull through the bait a lot better on the strike, and what you'll find is you get a better hook hold. So because them things sat in the peg, I've swapped the pot size, just gone down to a medium pot. So hopefully what that's going to do is almost purposely slow the peg down. I don't want chaos, I just want everything nice and clean and controlled. I'd rather sit there 30-40 seconds, maybe longer, and just get a nice clean bite rather than create the washing machine and have a nightmare. You see now, since we've come into that shallower depth, I'm able to set my rig a lot nicer. There's an odd indication, but I don't mind that. I've not got the carnage that I had before. Ooh, so I just missed that indication there. So just give it a quick 30 seconds. So I just reset my rig, make sure everything sits nicely. So you see the rig's not sat there, so I've laid that too far up the slope. There we go, that's settled a bit better. And all I'm looking for is a nice sharp fast bite. If I don't get one very quickly now, because that trap's been disturbed and that fish has swirled, I'm just going to come back in and feed and redo it all. But again, I'm not sure if that camera's still on that edge, but you see how little bait we fed that time and how many fish are still coming in and swirling. Oh, so that bait's not released, that's my fault, pressing it in too hard. There you go. See that again, too slow and deliberate to be a bite, just ignore those, we don't want to be foul hooking them. Some big fish coming in there. and you see the difference in the indication. I think Ben's got it on the camera about what is a true bite and what is a liner. Another nice little tip, you see here I've got a couple of sections sat behind me in case we hook one of them real zoo creatures that want to disappear at 100 miles an hour. It just gives me a little leeway. I can get them sections on and follow them out. Luckily this one's behaving for now. That was the ghosty. There you go. Nice Gary the ghosty in the net, and a perfect example of picking the right indication for your edge fishing. So I'll just unhook him and we will hopefully hold him up for you if he's behaving. Now just hook that kit up. So hopefully he's nice for us. Look at that for a fish. Get him back. And hopefully that has just perfectly proven to you, you don't need to always feed massive volumes of bait. It's about understanding how the fish are behaving and how to create that lightning fast clean bite rather than the carnage that, you know, we've all had before in the edge. What we've done, we've just dropped him there after we've tidied the bottom up a little bit. We've smoothed it off after there was a bit of a slope, but check your rules, make sure you're allowed to do it. And what we've done is, it's a little bit deeper close to the bank now, just by smoothing away that mud. So what that does is it prevents the fish going behind your rig. And what we've basically just dropped straight back in, fed the bait as we were, but because of that prevention of them fish going behind your float, everything's a lot cleaner. And I think we're hopefully attached to one of the famous Laurels ghosties, but he's not right impressed with me at the minute. It just shows how tiny little percentages make such a massive difference in what you catch. So all we're doing is keeping that top kit nice and low, using that puller. There he is, look. Just take your time with them, you don't need many of them. The worst thing you can do is hook these big fish, play them for a while and then pull the hook out. Right, no, it's not quite ready. Don't go snatching it and just wait for them to pop up. Oh, there we go. Got him. Look at that for a fish. Absolutely stunning Laurels Lake ghosty. Smack in the corner of the top lip, bang where you want him. Proper old warrior. Right, so I think unfortunately we're going to have to make this the last fish, providing we get it in. But hopefully it's give you a nice little insight into margin fishing, the do's and don'ts, and the few situations where changing what you do can make a massive difference to what you catch. Just make sure we get him. There we go. Nice big F1 to finish on. And the hooks come out in the net. So let's see if we can get this hook out and hold him up for you. So there we have it. Cracking F1 to end the day on. Slipping back. So thanks for watching, folks, and thanks to Ben for having me on the channel. Hope it's helped you with a few little bits and things, and if you have any questions, if you drop myself or Ben a message, more than happy to help you out. And if you want to see anything else, or if you got anything you guys need a hand on, if you drop Ben a message, I'm sure we can sort something out and get another one done for you.